Thanks for having us here on a different topic. We're here to follow up on our request for a letter of support for an economic development grant that we're submitting to the EDA to support a comprehensive economic development strategy update for Spokane County. I do have a couple of slides to just share if that's okay.
You bet.
Let me just now make sure I can navigate the screen share. Can you see that? Of course, it's backwards on my computer, so that makes it extra helpful for you today.
You can see it here. How about you, Josh?
Can you see it, Josh?
Yep, looks great on my end.
Okay, perfect. So we sent you the request for the letter of support, and I know I've had a conversation brief with each, well, I actually never connected with Commissioner Kearns, but with Commissioner French and Commissioner Cooney. On the phone with me as well is Lars Gilberts from the University District. Lars, as one of our key partners, has been supporting us in this process, and then Joey Gunning on the GSI team. The two of them have been really leading this effort as we are working with StanTech to put together our EDA grant application. So our, just a couple of pieces for you, and then I think the biggest request is that you had some questions, so we want to get to that. Just kind of overarching the rationale for a SEDS, as I know many of you know, but this is really focused on the need for a region countywide economic development strategy. We have had a SEDS in place for many years, but at this point it is fairly out of date, and some of the requirements have changed as far as the EDA is concerned when it talks about the importance of a region having a comprehensive economic development strategy. The other thing we know is that COVID has created an urgency for an even clearer plan for recovery, growth, and resiliency. And so really, as a region, we've been having this conversation for a couple of years now about the need for a new and really an overhaul of our SEDS. And so this opportunity presented to do it. The other thing is that we know the importance to it as far as positioning the region as we move through and into COVID recovery and long-term resiliency and growth, that communities like Spokane County could be well positioned from a competitiveness standpoint. And so doing the work now to ensure that our region is positioned well for that work. The other thing that's specific to the Economic Development Administration funds is that they have a few different buckets, and the time is now to apply, and that these funds will also, oops, sorry about that, create an opportunity should we have our SEDS in place. It actually increases our opportunity as a region for future funding opportunities from the EDA. And we want to do as much work as we can to put that in place as a region. So our ask to the county commissioners, there's a three-part ask. The first is your commitment to the letter of support that we've shared with you for our application to the EDA to support funds for a new SEDS. That letter of support would be around our commitment to both facilitate and implement that SEDS process on behalf of the region as the ADO. The second ask is an ask to the county to join with GSI, University District, and other community partners in committing to some in-kind staff match to be part of the SEDS planning process. That staff in-kind match would meet or exceed the 20% match requirements that we have as part of the EDA grant requirement. And then the third request is for you to consider two contingency options as the county and as the ADO. One of them would be for gap funding in the event that the EDA doesn't provide sufficient funds for the entire process. Would the county consider funding the difference needed to complete the SEDS process and rollout? And or a second contingency option, which would be around replacement funding, and the very unlikely opportunity that the EDA doesn't fund any of our requests. Would the county consider looking at helping to fund that effort so we can get a SEDS planning process underway? So I'm going to pause for a second. I know we shared that information with all of you, and we heard from you that you had some questions around the SEDS. I'm going to ask Joey and Lars to jump in. They've been doing the legwork on this with Stantec to help answer questions, but we'll pause and hand it back to you for what questions you might have on our request.
So Josh, do you have any questions?
I mean, just some generic ones. And I apologize we weren't able to touch base last week, Alicia. So I'm sure Commissioner French's questions, I'm sure, will be much more thoughtful than mine because he has much more experience with these than I do. But I guess some of the questions that I would have is how do you envision crafting a SEDS at such a time of uncertainty right now? I mean, not knowing where phases will be, not knowing what restrictions could be long lasting. I mean, just there's so much uncertainty around the economy. How would an accurate, reliable SEDS be crafted at a time like this?
Excellent question. And Lars and Joy, feel free to jump in. What I would say, Commissioner, kind of overarching, is that the SEDS there's a kind of a fairly prescriptive and a series of kind of elements that you create for a comprehensive economic development strategy, and that this is really it's a long arching. They're usually built for a 5-year plan or kind of 5-year strategy. And so, yes, there's lots of unknowns, certainly in the kind of COVID realities, yet at the same time, doing the work to be able to have kind of the overarching frame, which I think in some ways hasn't changed as a result of COVID, or maybe accelerates the importance of some of the pieces as a result of COVID. But it's really a longer term arc on our economic development strategy, less about this immediate time that we are in.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lars.
Well, and just maybe to a point here. So I think you all have experienced more than anybody. I think one of the more challenging things in responding to the COVID was who is doing what. And I think one of the biggest questions in this has been who's doing what on any of the strategies. To kind of amen some of what Alicia is saying there. Some of our key industries aren't changing radically overnight. The question would be, as we diversify our economy, as we try to raise our income base, as we try to help families have more disposable income to be able to invest, et cetera, what are some of the things that we need to address? But more importantly, who's leading? And then on the resiliency piece, when something unexpected happens, when the next unexpected thing happens, who's taking point on those things so that we can quickly follow, and that when you look around the country, the communities that have had clear plans and know how to take advantage of an opportunity and to mitigate a challenge are the ones that are succeeding the best. And we haven't necessarily been in that same position of competitiveness, and this would be helping us both from an organizational perspective, a strategy perspective, and a funding perspective to be ready both as we come out of COVID, as we strengthen and grow, but also when the next challenge happens.
Okay. Can I ask, in the last SEDS, what were some of the major goals, and were they met, or which major goals were not met?
So that's an excellent question, Commissioner. So a couple of things I'd say to you. It is a very out-of-date document. It was crafted probably almost 15 years ago, and we've been incrementally updating it as a region, mostly around projects. But it called out specific, if you look at it, it called out specific the target sectors that we've been focusing on around advanced manufacturing and aerospace, health and life sciences. And so we've seen some success, and then actually I'd say logistics and distribution. So we've had some success in those from a recruitment standpoint over time, if you think about things like an Amazon or a Caterpillar, and then certainly and shorter around the retention components. But it's a pretty comprehensive document. It also looks at all of your, all of your higher education assets and the research and things that are going on. And so what we really realized, and I'd say as I kind of have stepped into the role over the last couple of years, is how how the SEDS that was shaped 10 years ago doesn't really even represent the ecosystem that we're operating in today. That it was developed at a time when we didn't have public development authorities. We didn't have some of the assets that we really have as a region. And so it doesn't really reflect a shared strategy yes, who's on first, who's on second at different times, but then what are those ultimately, collectively, those 3 or 5 goals as a region that we're looking to achieve over the next 5 or 10 years of economic development? Those are the things that are missing. It did call out, successes around Fairchild and those kinds of things. And so a number of them have been met, but it also doesn't really create an accurate picture for our community. The other important thing of a SEDS is that municipalities often need a SEDS to be able to apply for EDA funding for capital and infrastructure investment projects. And so we've done enough work to keep it current enough for them to be able to access that if they are needed. But we as a region have not had a ton of success in receiving EDA funds for those types of projects for our municipalities. I think the most recent one was up in Deer Park.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm sure there will be people that ask this question, so I need to know what the answer is on how to respond. If some folks say, that this kind of is sort of the opposite of maybe a free market approach and more of an attempt at managing the markets. I mean, is there any truth to something like, I mean, this is sort of a plan on the direction we as a community want the market to go, rather than letting the market play itself out and go where the actual investors want to invest their money, or where the need is, 2 years, 3 years down the road, where a new industry may come and take us a completely other direction. Is this a document that could hurt that opportunity for the market to go where it naturally wants to go, if it goes against where the SEDS thinks our local economy should be going?
Lars, I saw you put your hand up. I'll let you jump in first.
I love that question. Thank you so much, Commissioner. So next, actually, I was addressing this with a community partner yesterday. And so I don't know if you're aware, but part of my background is in small business development. And so what I realized was that the business plan, business model canvas, whatever it might be for a small business, is very similar to what this is for our community. A business plan does not confine and, force a business to only do what is in the plan, and yet a business without a plan is much less likely to be successful and overcome the barriers and really leverage the opportunities than a business with a plan. And similarly for us, I would say the same thing is key, and I would really re-emphasize the element of resiliency. Whereas in past documents, in the current document that we have, a self-refreshing element and resiliency was not really built into it. And the new framework is exactly to your point of this is driven by data. This is like, what is driving the market right now? What is creating jobs? What's helping the local business community? What can we expect? Where could we support? But it will change, the market will change. How are you ready to respond to that so that you don't keep following the old strategies just because your SEDS hasn't been updated? And another thing that we would be looking at in this too is, how do we interface with the surrounding regions? There are economic development districts, there are other SEDS around us, and to think that we can operate just within our own county without being aware of what's around us is silly. And so how can we be more intentional about that, even so that our community can be nimble and responsive, that as things change in northern Idaho, that we're not left behind and working with old outdated strategies, but we stay nimble.
Can I ask, how long Alicia, you referenced there were some updates to the old SEDS, but when that SEDS was crafted, you said in 2005, how long was that used as a guiding document for GSI?
Well, for GSI and for the region,
Yeah.
it's really, the SEDS is really the region's comprehensive economic development strategy, not just GSI's. And so,
Okay.
I mean, it's been a guiding I'd say it's been kind of the guiding document over the last 10 years.
So even though, I mean, you have been making that is a document that you still go back to today.
We do. Oh,
Okay.
You do. And we have the 29 through 2019, it's fully, it's updated in the standpoint that it sort of reflects the pieces, some of the data has been updated. But what I'd say is that there isn't a shared, the ecosystem has changed so much. There isn't a shared commitment to, and I think probably for all of us, if we asked each of us what we believe kind of the region-wide strategy for economic development is or should be for the next 5 and 10 years. There's not a shared agreement on that. Not because there isn't an interest or a need, but just because we've been kind of talking around the importance of that. And also I'd say if you look back at some of the achievements over the last 10 years, we've also as a region been very heads down on bringing things on board, and some of the things that were laid out in the original sets. And so it's also just a really great kind of COVID aside over the last year, the importance of really, I don't mean to the word pause, but to pulse together as a community and think forward on our next 10 years has become more and more necessary as we've hit some of those initial milestones around growth in the university district, for example, and those kinds of things. Not that we're done with it, but that we have certainly much more to do and want to make sure that that's reflective of the region as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know, Mary, have you joined us? Okay.
Yes, I joined us like right away, so I'm just like 4 minutes late.
Okay, do you have any questions?
No, Lars and I talked about it, and I think you know, I know you have been around this a long time. I haven't, but I think it is good to update. I think with our PDAs in place now, and you know, just different things that are happening, I think it's a good thing to just all, you know, have a, you know, come together and really look at it and have a plan. So based on the discussion that I have with Lars, I'm favorable to this.
So I've got a couple questions for you. One is how much? You indicated that you're looking for the county to potentially backfill if the grant doesn't go through. How much are you looking for?
So it would be, if they funded, if it was the gap funding, it would be somewhere up to $200,000. And if they didn't fund us, which we think is very unlikely, it would be closer, and Lars and Joy jump in, closer to 350,000.
Yeah, if you don't mind, and Commissioner Kearns, just as a kind of brief note, because I was actually emailing back and forth with David this morning on the Northeast PDA, and just kind of like, how do they fit into all this? So I think part of what we've been working toward is if we can get outside free money, we want to do this as well as possible. And I think, just being completely candid, I think we all, like, our community has changed so much over the last couple decades that yeah, there's not clear consensus about where to move forward. And so having an outside set of facilitators that can bring good, clean outside data for us, facilitate conversations, and make sure that every community is actively involved and heard, and then that is woven into the strategy. What we found for some communities our size, both in its diversity, the type of municipalities, et cetera, that it's about $175,000 to have that facilitated. So it's not a cheap process. It's definitely possible to do it cheaper, but in the end, there's always going to be a trade-off. So does each community feel like they were heard as much, or they engaged as much? We can always kind of cut back and focus on the larger stakeholders, but that's part of the challenge that has gotten us to where we are, that those with larger voices feel heard and those with smaller voices sometimes don't. And so if we really want to bring people together to move forward in the future, having a real meaningful process is part of that. So on the cost, on the basic, we're looking at about $175,000. On the minimum for the consultant services, which provides the data analytics, the community convening, the strategy formulation, the strategy implementation plan, as well as then all the graphics and report development to meet the EDA standards. So it's fairly heavy lift, but it can be done a little bit more cost effectively if we needed to. The additional, we're asking for up to $300,000 from the EDA, because a key part of this is how many of you have actually read the SEDS? Has the SEDS have a meaningful impact on your lives? Not so much. And so part of this, because and again, I really respect, Alicia, that this is not a GSI document. This is a community document. So how do we make it possible for the community to own? And so one of the things we're looking at is there a dashboard that has real-time feedback for the partners, like the Advantage Spokane partners that are investing in promoting Spokane, improving and developing Spokane, in where are we on these things, but also external focusing that helps sell Spokane of a cohesive, vibrant community. And so when we start adding some of these additional pieces of implementation, developing a plan, but that's great, we can get that done in 6 to 9 months. But how do we get the community on the same page and moving forward? How do we have some of those dashboards? How do we have some pilots for interventions for some of those strategies? That's where that total 300,000 that we're asking from the EDA. I think any gap funding would be significantly less than that because we start value engineering at that point. But in the end, it's what does a cohesive economic development strategy, what's the value of that to you? And we would love for your commitment to be commensurate with that value.
So who are the other partners that you've reached out to? Because certainly you're not looking for the 350 to just come from the county. I'm assuming the cities are going to weigh in and some of the other partners. So who else has been part of that conversation, and what do you think the final ask is of the county?
So Joey, do you want to share? It's a massive stakeholder list, and there's a handful. So Joey, can you just share a little bit, just give them a snapshot of the stakeholders?
Yeah, so I'm pulling it up right now. The ask of the stakeholders was really just because we have to have a 20% match in-kind services. And so we're asking the stakeholders to provide staff time with not only the development of the SEDS, but as Lars was saying, the implementation of it 3 to 5 years down the road. We want to have a long-term strategy. And so we've asked for that match from the stakeholders, but we've reached out to, it's not pulling up, all the municipalities, I'm trying to pull up the list right now. Yeah. Municipalities, all the local chambers, the AHANA, INWAC, the Hispanic Business Association, all the PDAs, our community business partners, education, universities, Spokane Public Schools, and then public assistance agencies, SBA, and then a few foundations. But we're just really asking for, we want this to be a true, like as Lars and Alicia both referenced, a regional document. And I think that's really the point of it. We can update as we've updated our SEDS. It hasn't been a true update because we haven't had the regional discussion like it had back when it was formed. And so that's really the goal. And as Lars mentioned, it keeps going back to resiliency. And so we just want to have as wide of a net as we can and capture get as many partners involved as possible.
How long are you anticipating this process to take?
I think we want to have, I think 9 to 10 months to get the SEDS developed, but then it's a 3 to 5 year, truly a 3 to 5 year process to have as Lars was saying, the dashboard live and the true implementation, because the EDA requirements or say that the SEDS has to be updated every 5 years to truly meet their standards. And so after 5 years, it would need to be updated again. But that's kind of the long term. I don't know, Lars, if you had more thoughts on that.
Yeah, just a briefly thing. Commissioner French, we're very action oriented. I am very much action oriented on this one because in the end, we need to be doing certain things sequentially, concurrently, not sequentially. So the goal right now is by next Monday, if at all possible, next week, period though, that this application goes in. Because again, as Alicia alluded to, we have a unique opportunity here. The EDA has $1.5 billion of CARES dollars that, again, had we been able to have this in place perhaps ahead of time, we would have been able to access up to another $400,000 pretty easily with no competition. Again, so that's why we're trying to position ourselves for the future. So we have those federal CARES dollars, a the current year of EDA funding and the next fiscal year of EDA funding starting October 1st. And with one application, we can be able to compete for all three of those pots of fundings, and they can kind of bundle it together. With the sequence of that, we want to get this in right away. By the end of September, we want to have a compliant RFQ so that we can be selecting a vendor. Ideally, by my hope would be by the end of October that we've selected a vendor. And again, when we say we, the strategic partners, the county, the key municipalities, people that are investing in this work right now and that need this to be a good plan, would be selecting the group that would be leading it. And then once we kind of confirm the amount of money, and the response time is about 8 weeks right now with EDA. And so the goal would be that by the end of November, that we would be having a scoped project ready to go so that even before the end of the year, some data analysis could be done and we can start into the new year in the convening and such. While we've got a little bit extra time on our hands, maybe a little bit of physical distancing still happening. And then my goal would be, as we enter into the end of spring, beginning of summer, that can you imagine bringing our community together around a process that they feel truly bought in on, and we demonstrate some clear strategies to move forward and offer some hope to our community about what growth and opportunity looks like in Spokane County. Like, I'm excited to see that, and I think our community kind of desperately needs that. And so that's where, for my strategy, my timeline would be that May, June, July of next year, that we are starting to, when we can bring larger groups back together, that one of the first things that we're bringing them back together on is to celebrate a new comprehensive strategy. And one thing I just wanted to own, because I think I've shared with a number of you, part of that timing, if and when the federal government forces you all to comply with that December 31st deadline for utilizing and deploying your CARES dollars, I know everybody and their brother has got great ideas about how you can deploy those, and yet possibly having some gap funding for a strategy that helps us respond to the impacts of COVID in this community. If that's qualifying, that's where I was kind of hoping that if we could have it set up so that if you had extra dollars that you needed to commit or expend before the end of the year, that we would have an opportunity that you saw as valuable to potentially invest some of those dollars in.
So all of the different agencies that you listed, Joey, they were signing on to the letter of support, or were they committing to help fund the activity as well?
Well, we have two different levels of support. We have strategic partners and collaborative partners, and a lot of the municipalities and some of the like the airport and those were strategic partners, whereas they are not only gave us a letter of support but also signed on to commit to a certain level of in-kind match and financial support, and then the collaborative partners just signed on with the letter of support, and it's a very not as active involvement.
So two last questions. I'm sorry, Alicia, go ahead.
No, and I was just going to say, Commissioner, to your questions, I think that really at the ask as far as the timing for the letter of support, it would be the letter of support with the commitment to the in-kind staff match and a commitment to to further the discussion on financial if and so warranted, but not the county not needing to make a decision today on the contingency options that we put forward, but wanting you to be aware to put those options out there for the county for consideration. But those would only be, we would only be going back to those strategic partners should the EDA not fund us or only fund us partially. But the letter of support would just reference that, but not commit any of the strategic partners to a specific dollar amount as part of that letter of support, other than the in-kind staff match and commitment to be part of the strategic partner group.
So two last questions. One, I'm assuming GSI is going to be the lead on this?
We would be the facilitator of it, yes, sir.
Okay. And then the last question is, Lars, define the region.
I feel like it's a wonderful and dangerous question. So for the purposes of this and the EDA, they're looking at the county. And so this is why you get to bless this, this application and move forward. In the end, an economic development district requires it to be a multi-county region. currently we are surrounded by EDDs. And so when we look north of us, we see a tri-county EDD. South of us, there's one. North Idaho has one. But we, Lincoln, Adams, and Grant are currently not part of one. They make very rare exceptions historically to make an EDD of one county. We don't anticipate that. So I'd say for the purpose of this SEDS, it is just Spokane County. As we look at the region, depending on the strategy, depending on the other thing, we can look at it a variety of different ways. I'll leave it there, but for the purpose of the SEDS, it's the county. Depending on the strategy, when we're looking at aerospace, that region looks differently if we're looking at health sciences, or if we're looking at logistics or some of these other things.
Okay. Any other questions, Mary or Josh? So, the question for us is, do we want to go ahead and make a motion to send a letter of support for the grant application? And if so, just need a motion, Josh.
And then the staff time.
Going to treat it as two separate issues.
Sorry.
Okay, I was gonna tack it on to this one.
Well, if Josh, if you want to make the motion to include both of them now, go ahead. That's your choice. I was going to break it up separately, but we can do it in one motion if you feel comfortable doing that.
Okay. Mr. Chair, move to approve and authorize the drafting and signing of a letter committing our support for the SEDS development process, and to participate in the benchmark of meeting the goal of 20% of in-kind staff assistance as required as a part of the application process, to be signed by the board at other than an open public meeting.
I will second the motion.
Okay, we've got a motion and second. Any discussion? See none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye, let the record reflect, motion passed unanimously. So we will have a conversation about funding at a later date when we've got a better idea about what that looks like and what the other partners are going to spend. And I'm sure we can find a nickel or dime somewhere, but probably not more than a quarter. So anyway, thank you, Alicia, Lars, group, for sharing with us, being with us this morning.
Thanks, commissioners. We appreciate it. Thanks for your support. Have a great rest of the day.
Take care. Next item is Gil, mental health.
Come on down.
Come on down. Price is right.
Pass these out. Oh, you guys have something already.
Printed mine out.
Yeah, I've got mine in front of me. But that's okay. I got it on my screen.
Does Josh and Mary have this
I
spreadsheet?
sent it to them.
Okay. Did both of you get the spreadsheet on the bids, bid tabulation?
What's that?
Send it, Gina. Is there an extra?
I don't think I did. I can though.
Shake your heads or say yes or no, so we can send it to you if you don't have it.
I'm looking for, when was it sent?
I sent it this morning.
Gina's scanning now.
Jerry,
I
can
could-
you email it?
950 it went. I can forward it right to you now.
Oh, no, I got it. I see it.
Mary, you got it? Okay.
Okay, they got it, good. That's a good start.
Yeah. Anyway, so I had a chance this morning. This is to discuss the base bid for the mental health crisis stabilization with the alternates. So I was trying to get a hold of purchasing to come with me, but as the base bids came out, it looks like we had a clear winner for the base bids was Baker Construction. And then we actually, where we had a little bit of differences on it was on the alternatives. So I was trying to get clarification from purchasing this morning whether or not the base bid winner, if the alternates were within the realm of basically close enough, could we award it to the base bidder? So that's what we were looking at doing this morning. And then Arian was going to talk a little bit about funding for the alternates for the project, but it looks like where we came in at was around, for the base bid itself, it was just a little over 5 million. With the alternates, it came in at, with Baker Construction, it came in at 6,598,000. And the other ones that came in that were just a little bit lower than that, they were so close, I felt, with that size of a project, that with them being the base bid winner, that's who we would award to.
So you're waiting for purchasing to weigh in on this?
Well, I was kind of hoping I was coming down with the resolution, but I couldn't get a hold of Brenda this morning because she had asked me to get the resolution. Did she want me to get or she would get the resolution together to present here at 10:20, but I wasn't able to get a hold of her. So, and I think that it was because I asked for that clarification about the winning bidder baseline as opposed to baseline with alternates. So
Mr. Gimmel, I would assume that the bid specifications address how you consider the alternates in awarding the bid. And that's why I think it's very appropriate to discuss this with the purchasing department to be sure that we understand what the bid specifications said in this regard.
Yes. Well, Tony's there now because he just emailed me.
okay.
Is he able to call in for systems?
We'll ask him.
So I guess, Gil, that's my question is, what did the bid documents state as the basis for award? Was it based on the base bid? Was it based on the base bid plus alternates, or the base bid plus the owner's choice of the alternates?
I put on my Evelyn Wood speed reading dynamics this morning and tried to find that specifically in the criteria. And that's why I got about part of the way through it, and I thought I better get a hold of purchasing. So I kind of deferred it to them.
Okay, because that's what's going to drive this.
Right.
The intent was.
Is what our bid documents.
They're just going to do the basics.
Commissioner, I believe when we went out to have the design firm create a more robust alternative list, it was for the third option. And I know Jim and Maceo helped with that so that we had at our discretion the ability to, in a capital total, add or choose not any number of alternatives. So confirming that, I think, will help us decide how to proceed with the selection.
Okay.
So, but I think too that there was some information I think that got out sometime between yesterday and the closing of bids that we had already awarded, and we had not made that decision yet. So I'm not sure where that information came from.
Well, I think just looking at the numbers on the alternates and stuff, it looks like you've got some confusion on the alternates as well. I'm thinking alternate 4B, clearly there's some a misunderstanding about what was and was not included in that.
Yep.
And also 5A and 5B, all three of those raise questions with regard to clarity in the bid. So I think you would, if nothing else, you'd want to have a conversation with the contractor to make sure that those numbers are good numbers, and that there was clearly an understanding of what the alternate was asking for, because that kind of spread tells me somebody didn't understand something.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some of these where, on the sheet vinyl for the addition, one group has it at 25,000, one has it at 4,000. So there is some things that when I was reviewing this morning that I definitely would like to get some clarification on. But again, I need to have that meeting with purchasing. I was kind of hoping to come into this today with it being very, very clear cut, but it appears that it's not. I know that this project alone generated 9 addendums during the bidding process. So we tried to clarify every question that came in all the way up until last weekend. So we I definitely would like to get some clarification on these, have a meeting with the purchasing group and really try to get this hammered out before we award. But I wanted to make sure specifically in the RFQ that we were actually, for the bids, that we were actually, it's spelled out in there whether or not we award it to the baseline bidder or the overall bidder or whatever.
For our discretion.
Exactly. I just need to.
I'm asking Tony if he can call my personal phone. He's, like I say, he's probably remote, but he's answering my email, so.
Would we want to talk about funding while we're waiting for that, or?
Yeah, for the alternates.
Did you have a?
Well, I mean, if you, obviously you've got a number of contractors here that
Hi, Tony.
didn't bid the alternates.
Yeah.
And so, but
You listen to this.
And that
even with assuming that Baker Construction stays at the numbers that they are, and I would suggest that there's probably some confusion there and those numbers should be lower to match some of the others. It seems like Baker is right in the ballpark for a reasonable bid. And so even if they were the low, but they weren't the absolute lowest after all the alternates, you're still in that same range there and stuff. But Barry's right. The bid documents are going to tell us which way, what our latitudes are.
Tony, I've got you on my phone and you're on speakerphone. So we're having a discussion on the bids, and what we're trying to get clarity on is we've got a low bidder on the base and we've got some separation on the alternates. And we're trying to decide what is it that the bid document says is the basis for the bid. Is it the person with the base bid or what? Do you know?
So is this for the design or the construction?
Construction.
Okay, yeah, construction is going to be the low bid.
For the overall with alternatives or for the overall baseline?
I will have to look at the language in there to figure out exactly how to get that for you though.
All right, that's what we're after, Tony.
Yeah, Tony, we're after what the bid document said to the bidders.
Snip it and send it so that we all have.
Yeah, if you could snip off what the bid document said or told the bidders and ship it to us or email it to me and I can share it with everybody else.
Okay, and then there's been the emails going back and forth on an emergency declaration. If we were to go that route there, we wouldn't really need to worry about that. We could choose whoever we wanted to go with.
I think he's confused.
Yeah, that's you're on a different project. This is for the mental health stabilization. I've been following your emails on the other one, so.
Gotcha. Okay, I will dig into the mental health and see exactly what that says for alternatives.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, no problem.
So for today, on the, Aaron can talk a little bit about the alternates, but on this portion, I will get back together with the purchasing group. I'll get some clarification on the alternates to make sure, especially on some of these numbers, there's some huge disparities in them. So I just want to make absolutely sure. And then that way, if the document says that we can award the bid based on the lowest bid for the base bid, and it's at our discretion for awarding the alternates, being that they are fairly close. But again, I just want to make sure that these numbers are correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, because we also don't know that we're going to accept all the alternates. So, I mean, it's
That's
based on the base bid in the bid documents, but until we know that for sure, because again, the alternates were at our discretion.
Yep.
Commissioner, that's actually a really important piece for this consideration. So our total capital amount is 6.8 million. So even the highest overall that includes all the alternates is within the amount we have to spend. There are some kind of ancillary things as far as contingency or permitting or whatnot. That still leaves some funding for that. But I think it would be helpful, especially relating to our partners, that since we are within our capital budget that we are going to choose a bidder that includes all of the alternates.
Arian, I wouldn't state that at this point in time until we know what the bid documents state, because we want to make sure that we're not, I just want to be clear on the bid documents, that until we know that it's based on the low baseline bid and the alternates that we choose, you know, I just want to make sure that's done first before we state that we're going to do all the alternates.
Well, the other part of this too is that if our max capital budget is 6.8, and even if you look at Baker, he's at 6.6, that doesn't allow for any kind of contingency. And typically you go into construction with at least a 5 to 10% contingency. So that's another 600,000 on top of this number to be able to get you through. And my other part is, does this include sales tax?
Does not.
So you got sales tax on top of that. So there's another 9%.
Right.
Between the 9% sales tax and between the contingency, you're going to exceed that 6.8 pretty darn quick.
Yeah, and I just, until, like I said, until we figure out where we're at on the bid document and what we can, who we're choosing, I think we can't determine that we're doing all the alternates.
I did want to relay, I did speak with Wes and the mayor this morning, and they did want to say that because we're within that minor amount of capital gap, they are in support of continuing to once again either forward or even outside of an ILA cover that. But would like to know before, you know, we made a decision, because once we make a decision, then any alternatives now become a change order, which changes the value. So I wasn't sure how to convey. I can convey right now that we're on hold due to a bid clarification, but I did want to relate to you what they indicated this morning.
So if, so it's just thinking out, so if you've got a 6.6 million, is that what the number was?
6.6.
Yeah, 6.6 million. And just for giggle numbers, you're going to throw a 20% on top of that for contingencies and sales tax. Then you're throwing another, what, 1.25 on top of this. So now you're at almost 8.1. 7.8. Yeah, somewhere around in there. And so, you know, unless the city's willing to pick up that difference, you know, our max is 6.8. So that's, so if you have to communicate anything to the city, you know, that's our real number. If we assume all the alternates, which we're, you know, if they don't want to pay for the alternates, then we're obviously going to be picking and choosing which ones we want, which ones we don't want, to be able to get back into our budget.
Is that something that you want them to indicate which alternates they're willing to front to help you with that or pay the gap of, or do you want that to be independent of where they're going to pay?
I think that's, I think it's got to be, well, I don't know. I would think we would want to take the first blush at what the alternates are, and then we can have a conversation with the city and see if they agree. Mm-hmm. But I would think we would want to take first blush. What do you think, Josh and Mary? Would you agree with that or not?
I would agree with that, because then I think the next thing would be to, you know, once we determine the bid, look at what the alternatives are willing to look at to get us to that number. And then it would be a face-to-face conversation with the city, you know, nothing against Jerry, but I think it's like, you shouldn't be the middle person. This is the conversation between us and the city management.
Agreed.
Jerry?
Nope.
Oh, is that you had your hand up?
No, I was just doing some calculations in my head. Sorry.
I think that sounds
Was it making noise?
I'll let them know.
Was it clunky, the noise?
Rusty, very rusty.
I heard something. I wasn't sure what that was. All righty.
You got some gears missing.
Anything else that either one of you would like to see staff provide for us other than clarity around the bid documents?
Nope.
Okay. Very good. So we look forward to hearing from you quickly.
Yeah, so what we're gonna try to do is I'll put together the document this week, and we'll lay out the bids, we'll lay out the alternate bid list, with all the separated numbers. And then that way we can, and then we'll get clarification on the actual awarding of the bid.
Right.
So that way the next time we come in, hopefully we'll have the resolution to award the bid.
Yes, because I would think based on the alternates and just based, Al knows construction as well as I do with this stuff, that it's, that it's probably stated that it's the base bid and then we determine the alternates that we choose.
Yep.
And so the base bid is what we're using as our low bid. But again, that's just all assumptions. So that's why we need to make sure what was clear in the bid documents. And if it's not clear, then we're going to get into murky waters.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Thanks, Aaron.
All right.
Thank you.
We are having fun now. Okay. So now we are at our favorite topic, guiding principles. At our last meeting, we asked Maggie to come back with some language, and she did. And then I took the liberty of trying to go through that and get to where I wanted to offer up some language for your consideration. So I emailed this to you this morning. And so did you guys, Josh, Mary, did you get my email this morning?
I have gotten it. I was on a Central Valley call, so I have not had a chance to look at anything yet.
Okay. Have you had a chance to look at what Maggie put together?
No.
I can want to share it.
Why don't we go ahead and share
really
it?
short. Yeah. It's.
It'll take me a second.
Yeah, that's all right.
I mean, I'm looking at it on mine now. I guess what would have been nice is just to see what the changes you made versus what Maggie had, I guess. Track change.
Well, that would require a level of IT
It's beyond our capability.
beyond our, actually, I can go through the changes for you.
Yes, my problem is with my computer problem yesterday and getting it fixed, now I'm not connected to our printer, so I can't print because my tech support guy actually went to work today, so.
We're paperless, Mary. It's 2020. Come on, we don't do paper. Yeah.
Helpful to have it and, then highlight the changes.
Paper is so 20th century.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh.
Hey,
I resemble that remark.
so, and I have not had a chance to review any of this with Maggie and stuff. So Maggie, feel free to jump in here as well if you have any comments or observations for this. So let's see. So when you go to Maggie's document, the opening sentence says, "We commit to taking immediate steps to address, fund, and support areas that strategically reduce long-term impact of racial disparities." There's in that, these are supposed to be, in my mind, and feel free to argue with me or debate. I'm just, like I say, I'm just trying to find language we can all agree to. My challenge with that was that immediate implies that, once we've addressed it now, that we're done. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is going to be an ongoing concerted effort to address not only in the criminal justice system, but also in the community. The other thing is that we have not had a conversation about funding. And so to put an open statement that says we're going to fund something without having any idea of how much, I thought put us at risk. And the other thing is that in thinking about this, the disparities in the criminal or the law and justice system are not just racial. I mean, there are gender disparities, there's social economic disparities, there's a variety of them, and to limit it to just racial seemed to me to narrow the scope as opposed to looking at the system holistically and saying, we want to get rid of all the disparities, regardless of their nature and stuff. So my opening statement is really designed to try and say, you know, we commit to take steps strategically to reduce the occurrence of disparities, not the impact. Because if you're reducing the impact, it's after the fact. What we want to do is prevent them from happening from the very beginning. So that's why I changed the word impact to occurrence of disparities across the county's law and justice system. And then it goes down to the 3 bullet points. That first bullet point is basically saying that we're applying a health equity lens because really what we're talking about is the improvement of the law and justice system so that we've got basically a healthy system and that it does, like I said, cross all categories that impact the law and justice system. So whether it's policies, programs, services, all of that comes under our jurisdiction. And I wanted to be specific to what's under our control as opposed to the entire law and justice system, because quite frankly, the only part of this that we really have control over is detention. We don't prosecute, we don't arrest, we don't adjudicate. All we do is we incarcerate and stuff. And so, so that's why I tried to narrow it to the scope that we control. Then including impacted stakeholders in the development evaluation, that in my mind, those are the representatives that we have on the SRLJC or any other stakeholder that might be involved in an element of the criminal justice system that we're addressing. And then finally, investing in hiring, recruiting practices, professional development opportunities that address inequities. I did have a conversation with Tim Hansen, and he said a lot of this we already do, but that there are a couple of software programs that he can add on to our e-learning package here at the county that would address the issue of disparities, inequities, and things like that. So he felt that that's a bar that he can meet. There's some things he has to do that we're not currently doing, but there are good things to do and probably something that all 3 of us would support anyway and stuff. So that's kind of the background or the approach I took in trying to making some suggestions to this thing and stuff. So this is just a starting point. If you want to edit it, criticize it, throw it away, that's all good. I just wanted to try and get something that at least I felt comfortable buying into. So you want to have Maggie weigh in on it, or Josh, Mary, do you want to take a shot at it?
No, I'd like to hear what Maggie has to say.
Okay, Maggie?
Sure, good morning, everybody. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, great, perfect. So I just have a couple thoughts about the revised language. One is to just be explicit that second bullet point referencing impacted stakeholders includes individuals with relevant lived experiences. I think that's something that Commissioner French is already sort of taking into account there, but it would be helpful to lay out explicitly. And then in terms of that,
Maggie, how did you phrase that with relevant living experience?
Relevant lived experience.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then just in terms of the third bullet point, I think I'm glad to hear that Human Resources is already thinking about ways that they can partner to support this last piece. One thing that I've also implemented in a lot of our hiring is in my office is including a community member on the selection committee. So that's something else for folks to consider. And I just think that third bullet point can be more expansive than simply our electronic learning or e-learning, which I think is great, but can also go above and beyond that. So I wouldn't want to narrow down that language anymore, but excited to see more of those new modules.
I think the professional development opportunities, to me, Maggie, kind of address what you were just bringing up. I mean, that goes beyond just the e-learning. What that tries to capture is the fact that, you know, who is on our interview committees? Are we training our managers and our hiring authorities to look for, you know, disparities in not only race, but economic conditions, maybe language. I mean, there's just a host of things that can be addressed, but I think that's what captures that, not just that you can plug in the computer, which is good. It's good that we have these programs, but this is ongoing. And I think it comes from the top. What that tells me, if the board decides to use that as part of their goals, what it's telling me is everybody that's under my umbrella, I'm responsible to do professional development and kind of lay out, this is what, you know, we're looking for when it comes to hiring practices and how to recruit and where to recruit and who's going to go with us to recruit, that whole thing. That's what it says to me anyway.
So Mary, Josh, your thoughts, comments, criticisms?
No, I think it's well written. To Maggie's point with the second bullet point, including the, you know, individuals with lived experiences. I mean, I think the way it's written, that's implied that those people would be kind of covered in that umbrella, where it says including impacted stakeholders. I mean, that how I read that was individuals who have been in the justice system, who have those lived experience. I mean, that's kind of what I see as I read that statement. I figured that what you mean by that are people who have been incarcerated. Was that your intent when you wrote that?
Me or Maggie?
You, Commissioner French. Impacted stakeholders, or I read that as people who have been incarcerated. Is that correct?
That was my goal, and agreed with the language of impacted. You know, somehow you've had to have an experience with the law and justice system, and you bring that life experience with you to the conversation and stuff. So,
So I mean, the way I read it, I think the way you wrote it includes what Maggie wanted to add to it. I mean, I think that's. I think it's two different ways to say the same thing, I guess, is I think that the way it's written. So
I would say I would add Maggie's comments because, I mean, they're long enough already that I'd rather just make it clear than not clear. So if Maggie didn't see it as a, you know, that she thinks there needs to be further clarity there, then I would add a couple of words.
So we could restructure that sentence to where it says, including impacted stakeholders with relevant lived experience in the development and evaluation. I mean, if we say it twice in the same sentence, I don't know that it devalues the value of the statement.
Right. I don't think it does. So I mean, it's just adding the words that provides that additional clarity.
Are you okay with that, Josh, or?
Sure. I mean, so do you want to take, so including impacted stakeholders and individuals with lived experience? Because I think the way it's written now, I think it kind of hits, it kind of hits on two. It would be those that have been incarcerated, but impacted stakeholders could also mean like victims advocates that also have a representation on the SRLJC. If you change it to just those with the lived experience, that kind of implies that it's just incarcerated individuals, not kind of both groups, meaning victims and incarcerated individuals. Did you kind of get where I'm getting with that?
No, I understand. That's a good observation. Maggie, your thoughts?
Sure, thank you. I think the word that I was stumbling over is stakeholders. We often use that to reference systems actors. And so just clarifying that we're actually talking about community representatives. And I use the language relevant lived experience in order to try and capture what Commissioner Kearns was referencing, that we need to include lived experience of those who have been, those who identify as victims or survivors of crime, as well as those who have been in contact with the justice system or law enforcement in the jail, et cetera.
Would changing just stakeholders to community members take care of that, do you think, Maggie?
Yes, and I defer to the commissioners in terms of the best way to word it. I just think it would be beneficial to explicitly identify that we are talking about community members here and not local government officials.
Okay.
I'd be okay with community members if we wanted to strike stakeholders and put community members in there.
I mean, that's the term we use on the SRLJC, the community member representatives. So kind of in line with that.
Okay.
But I mean, Maggie, if you do think there is a benefit to have the words impact or lived experience, I mean, if you think that's, I mean, if you think that that's really important, I mean, we can continue to discuss that.
I think impacted community members gets to the same outcome or gets to the same point.
Okay.
So we're back to including impacted community members in the development of an evaluation. Are we keeping or we're dropping the with relevant lived experience?
I heard dropping.
I think, Maggie, based on changing stakeholders to community members, then we could drop the.
Okay. Okay. What do you think about the other parts of it? And if you want to mull this over, we don't have to do it today. We can bring it back up on Monday, but I think there's a sense of urgency to try and just deal with this and adopt the guiding principles and be able to move on. But I'm certainly open to the will of the board.
I think it's good as is. I'm comfortable moving forward today. We've kicked this around a long time. Quite frankly, I think it was important. I think we have a stronger product because of it, and I think I think this is something that gets at the spirit of what it is we hope to accomplish.
Hey, Mary.
I guess I just want to make sure that the health equity lens, Maggie, I don't know, it's like, I'm wanting to see what, because in Maggie's terminology, she said a plain of race equity lens. So I think, I'm with Commissioner French where, it's more than just race. It's, there's social, economic, health, all of those. Does that cover all those lenses appropriately?
And I think health's left out of the discussion a lot, in these when you think about equity, but it has a major impact. The other
that was part of the whole resolution that we did at the health board, was to show that we understand it.
Yeah, and I expanded it to law and justice instead of criminal because you've got civil courts. And so that's not a criminal action, but it can still have disparities in it with regard to either municipal or district courts. So
I guess my question is does equity, this health/equity really ensure that we're looking through all the different lenses?
I think it's encompassing of all lenses that are out there. I mean, I would think it would be, it would be racial, it would be socioeconomics, it would be gender, it could, educational, it could be cultural. I mean, I see that as being sort of encompassing of all the potential disparities that are out there, is how I read that.
Okay.
I think it's broader and is more encompassing of all facets of our community.
that was my intent. So for whatever it's worth.
No, which I know. So Maggie, do you feel like that meets that? Because I mean, I agree. I mean, I wanted to look at it through more lenses and all lenses.
I think that there's probably just going to be ongoing debate around how and where we best address race and race equity. I think the language as is currently drafted does specifically call out racial disparities. And so from that, when applying an equity lens, I would sort of intuit that a racial lens would also be included into those different sort of analyses. So this language may not sort of address all of the concerns and desires that everyone has and wishes to see resolved, but I think it is at least a helpful step and some helpful framework.
So in one of my earlier drafts, I did include race, gender, a list of about 5 or 6 different category, education and stuff. And I ended up taking it out because the minute you put together a list, you run the risk of excluding somebody.
Right.
And so then I said, well, wait a minute, let's just take that out and just try and do something that's a global statement that addressed all lenses. And so that's the logic I used to try and get to this language, as opposed to trying to include all of them.
Yeah, but I think that's been part of the issue is it's, yeah. So I'm not ready to vote on it today.
Okay. So bring it back up Monday morning?
Yeah, I think I just want to, think through that piece.
You okay, Josh?
Sure.
Okay, we'll tee it up for Monday morning, and then, and then if you come up with any other language or anything, we can discuss that on Monday. Okay?
Thank you.
Commissioner French,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interject. I did have one other item I wanted to update the board on. I just wanted to make sure I snuck it in before we're at time.
It wasn't on my list. No, go ahead.
All right. So I wanted some time with the board this morning. I'm not sure how much you can afford, but we are prepared to publish a criminal justice data dashboard. And I wanted to walk you all through what this looks like. If it's okay with you, I'll share my screen and do a very quick overview so that you all are prepared for what we're planning to publish this later today.
Okay.
Great. Okay. So the data dashboard is funded by the MacArthur Foundation Safety and Justice Challenge. And so you can sort of look through why we included it in our grant proposal. It's to help us better understand our criminal justice system, track trends, as well as our progress with different reform initiatives, provide some level of oversight, and improve our transparency along with just our data analysis capacity. In order to do this, however, we had to first build out a data repository, and that basically is pulling data from all of these disparate data systems from detention services, law enforcement, the courts, et cetera, to create basically a warehouse of criminal justice data where we can standardize reporting and better understand trends across the system. So we're very close to having this sort of having this comprehensive warehouse. And if we click to the next slide, you can see all of the disparate, and the next one, all of these different systems that we have pulled from to begin this process. So you can see sort of law enforcement, detention services, pretrial, et cetera. The ones with the check boxes means that we have received permission and access to that data. The thumbs up means we've received permission but not access yet, and the others mean that we don't yet have permission or access to that data. So from this sort of warehouse, we've been able to provide ad hoc reports, and then we've also been building out a criminal justice data dashboard, which is basically a tool that we will that we're preparing to publish publicly later today, this evening, that allows people to sort of interact and explore relevant data. So if it's okay, I'd like to share my screen and just show you what it currently looks like to give you all an idea. Jared, is it all right if I share, or Ron? I'm not sure who's working the screen. Perfect. Okay, so the data dashboard I should mention was only possible because of a lot of support and partnership from detention services. Director Sparber and Aaron Lind worked with us from the very beginning and have been incredibly helpful, sort of being thought partners throughout this process and developing it. So can you all see this test screen on the webpage right now?
Blow it up?
Yes, I will blow it up. So I wanted to share you this. This is how it will look when you click on our webpage, and then you can blow it up to be a full screen like this. And each of these tabs at the top are buttons. So if you click on them, it'll take you to a new page. And you can see that there are filters at the top here for different demographics as well as sort of time periods. So you can interact with the data by clicking on something like this, and you can see all of these graphs change. And so it will allow all of us to sort of better interact with the data. So you can click or change the focus or the filters by clicking these tabs up here. You can also do it by just clicking one of these bars as well. So if we go to the first tab, jail population, you can see how we're presenting it now. We have the number of individuals in jail by month. So this captures the total confined population at the last day of each month. And then legal classification, so pretrial sentence, the bond amount, warrant types, and then also you can start to get down into some more specific charge level information here. Again, you can filter it from the top. You can also filter it by just clicking on a number here. So you can say, oh, wow, in July, 410 of the individuals on the snapshot were held pretrial. You can also filter by race as well to see that number filtered further. And you can see up at the top when something is filtered. So if anyone was going to take a screenshot, you would know that this is not the total population. This is a specific population that we're looking at. There's a little erase button up here, so that just clears the filters for you as well. You can click back to the homepage here. You can also click through the arrows here. So these are all of the jail admissions for a given month. So everyone flowing into the jail, not necessarily everyone held in it. And again, you can see what those numbers look like. You can see the charge hierarchy, so were they brought in with the highest charge of a felony or a misdemeanor. You can see the time of day as well. This is something that we've talked about at the Justice Task Force, understanding when people come in and when people go out. Again, the warrant type and the charge levels here. And then our release statistics as well are included. And this last page shows you how many people are released in any given month, as well as their length of stay, which is this line here. And then the charge hierarchy, who's being released. When someone's being released, are they captured as having the highest charge of a felony, a misdemeanor, or a hold? Again, the release time of day, so we can see, okay, people who are released between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m., what charges are they facing, or how are they being released? Is it their own recognizance, or did they post bail, for instance? And you can also, again, filter it by charge or use demographic pieces of information. And then finally, we do have a glossary at the very end, so you can scroll through to better understand any of the pieces of any of the data fields that we've included here. So I blew through that, trying to be sensitive to the time this morning. I'm happy to go over any questions. This is just a test page right now. It's not available publicly, but will be by tomorrow morning. This evening, we are going to be hosting a virtual community meeting just to provide an orientation to the community as well about what this is and how to sort of navigate it. Any questions or comments for me?
Very impressive, Maggie. This is great. a long time and waiting for this kind of access to data. You're big kudos to you and your team.
Yeah, thank you. It's big kudos to our data analyst, Diane Lindquist, who is officially on maternity leave today. She finished this up and then had a baby over the weekend. So congratulations to her, and we're so thankful for her work.
Well, I thought you demanded that, Maggie.
Yeah, I thought you were saying it. She had to get that done before she had a baby. So
She did text me on Saturday on her way to the hospital saying, okay, everything looks good. If you have questions, I'm still available for a few hours. So she was very committed to getting this ready to go.
Little boy or girl?
But I did not text her. A little boy, everyone's healthy and doing well.
Nice.
Good. Good. So can Mary, Josh, you got any comments?
I mean, I guess I would say congratulations. This is actually, what people have been wanting. And I think, it's the systems that have gotten put in place over time, to get us here, so a lot of hard work on a lot of people's part. And so, yeah, thank you for making it happen.
When does this go live?
Before, it should be live probably by 9 p.m. tonight, and I can send the board the link once it's available.
Okay, sounds great.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And this is just the starting point, so we hope to be able to add additional departments to the dashboard in the future. But for now, we're just starting with the jail, and again, appreciative for their help throughout the process.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Appreciate your time this
Maggie.
morning.
thanks, Maggie.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Alrighty. So that gets us to miscellaneous items. Any other miscellaneous items that you want to discuss, bring up?
So I do. So I have received a letter from Chuck Hafner to be reappointed to the board to finish his term. I did receive a phone call from him, but I have not listened to yet. So I guess it's the process that we just bring that forward. I bring it forward next week for appointment.
Yeah. Yeah, just we can, Gina, if you could go ahead and just work up a resolution, and we can take action on it next week.
Okay, great. Because I think since the appointment hasn't been filled, I mean, obviously we've been a little crazy busy. He resigned in June, and again, I'll just state that there was health issues with his wife and himself, and he feels like, especially since we're continuing on Zoom and all of that he can participate, and he has such knowledge, the health board, that I think during this time, and especially his knowledge in schools as we're looking to reopen schools and help guide that process, I think it's really instrumental to have him back on. And so that is my statement that will be to the public as to why I think it's important. And since he's a dedicated community volunteer, that I'm willing to have him come back and fill out his term.
Mary, I saw him Thursday night, and I thought he was looking better than I expected. I thought he was looking really well. So.
Yeah, with Scope, yeah.
He was there, participating well, and feeling better, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Jerry.
I have sent all of you, I forwarded, Tony Hall gave me the language from the bid that says award is by low bidder of base bid plus accepted alternatives. And then underneath it, he takes the exact language out. So I forwarded that to all of you.
So, but it looked like it was forwarded on this sprung structures. So I want to make sure that it's specifically for the mental health crisis stabilization.
I will make sure it is.
It is that. Can you forward
Okay.
it to Jim and to me, Jerry?
Anything else miscellaneous?
What's the plan for this afternoon after the 2 o'clock?
If we don't have any miscellaneous now, it's adjourned.
I have a very short executive session I'd like to have right after the consent agenda.
You don't want to do it this morning?
Well, I can do it this morning too. It doesn't make any difference.
So do either one of you have a hard stop time?
No.
If we run 12:05, are we okay?
Yeah, no, we're fine. No, I was just going to ask, I mean, if we take the lunch break to to evaluate the equity language. Is that something, Mary, do you think, is that enough time to have a decision by this afternoon to pass? I think, quite frankly, I think it's important for the community. We've seen a lot of angst about this. We've seen multiple articles about this. I think this is something that, quite frankly, I think the community wants us to pass. And I mean, can you take a few hours and be ready to vote after our 2 o'clock?
I don't think I will be able to, because I do have a 1 o'clock meeting. And I'm still struggling because I do feel that I would like to see racial within that, wording. So I know you guys are trying to go all inclusive, and I think we still, I'd like to be all inclusive, but I still want to make sure that we're addressing that. So that's what I'm struggling with.
Okay.
So what I was going to do, Josh, is then I need to pull back up what we did for the health board. I have not done that yet, to then see how it relates to this language.
Okay. So I did forward on to you a summary of a meeting that I told you I was having yesterday with some representatives from Spokane Public Schools and stuff. So when you get a chance, you might want to read through that. We had a really good conversation, and they raised some really interesting issues. So have you take a look at that as we circle back on the request for the school funding next Monday. So yeah, Mary.
So when I did talk to Tim Ames yesterday, and I've got Michael Dunn's information to call and talk to him, to see what their needs will be. So on Monday morning, who do we want to have talking to us? I mean, Ben Small will he's available. Tim Ames is available. I think it's important because he was part of the conversation with the base commander to talk about what they're trying to do for working military families. So on Monday, who all do we want? I did not promise anybody. I just asked if they'd be available if we would like them to. I mean, I think Central Valley we're going to need to, because we need to understand their ask. But I think, it's each district has their own needs that I'm finding out as I'm talking to some of these superintendents, and so they're not all the same. So I think we're going to have to think through how we want to look at that. My question to Mike Dunn is going to be, can you, ask the superintendents what their needs are, and again, we would be filling gaps. We're not providing, funds that they already have money for. One of the things that came up, just so you guys are aware, is on food for students. As the USDA is not going to give the same waiver that they gave last time, where they could just provide food, and so it's going to be for free and reduced, which means that when they're out there at these different food stations, where they did the drop-offs like they did in the spring, I don't want to see cash boxes out there. As an auditor, that's like the worst thing you can do. You're not supposed to be really letting people know who's free, who's reduced, all of those things. And so, I could see that as a gap that we could help fill, to just help provide food security to, people in need, less what the school districts would be getting from the USDA. So it's just going to be interesting. There's just different needs, and they're all learning as they're figuring out that they're not going back, and what they can and can't do, and all of that. So I think we're probably going to see, or I guess I would like to approach it that we would just have each school district come in and talk to us and let us know what their needs are, because some of the smaller districts are going to have different needs than the bigger districts. As we heard from Doug today, with connectivity, but I think Tim Ames, talking to him, they're actually going to try to run their buses to bring kids into those, day facilities. It's just hard to know unless we talk to, the superintendents, unless they really let us know what their needs are.
So what I learned yesterday was the group was So I asked them about the CARES funding and what their opinion would be. And they said, well, if you're going to give the school districts money, then you ought to give them money to open up the school so that the kids can go back to school, because that's really what they wanted. And they said, why would you have to give the schools money? And this is in the email that I sent over. It basically, one of the gentlemen that led the effort summarized the meeting and all the bullet points, and so I just forwarded it on to you. But they're saying, since the schools have not been, since the teachers have not been in the class since last spring and are not going to be in class this fall, why do they need more money? Why can't they take the money they've saved by not being open and use that to help subsidize some of the other programs and stuff? And so that was an interesting perspective. And then, so what I was hoping was that maybe Mike Dunn could come in with a big picture look at what's going on. But it sounds like if that's not going to be the case, then we've got 17 individual school districts that we've got to deal with. And, you know, that's gonna, is that really what we want to do with going forward? And how do you deal with the, you know, the equity between one school district and another one? And I don't know. We're going to get really wrapped around the axle here pretty good.
Right. Well, I think though we're going to see that, you know, rural districts are going to be different than the big districts. You know, it's going to be able to open up their, you know, they're going to have K through 2, but they've got, you know, a small enough group of kids that they can do it through all their schools to do the cohorts of 10 that Dr. Lutz is requiring. You know, some of the other schools, well, I shouldn't say requiring, strongly recommending. You know, so, you know, and there's issues, you know, when I talked to Tim, he was definitely like, I mean, he would love to tell you why it's costing as much or more, you know, that they're not saving any money by not having them, you know, being in class. I mean, the platforms that they purchased, you know, I mean, I know Central Valley right now is doing, you know, working with the teachers on teaching them how to use the new system and all of that, that's all happening prior to school starting, just like you have teachers in their classrooms prior to school starting. So you're not really saving any money, you know, but I would rather have the superintendents talk about that than me talk about it, you know, because they're the ones that really know. You know, and like I said, then on the free and reduced, you know, on the day camps, that's additional, you know, that's coming down, and how do we help with connectivity for those groups? You know, there's parents that are wanting to do parent groups, you know, at churches. So kids are, you know, interacting and social. I mean, opening up the schools at this point in time, especially for some of the schools, you know, I think we're going to see at Meade, you know, there's just discussions on the liability issues. And so we're trying to work with Bob Benwick, and I have been to say, okay, if there's a carve out for early learners, I need him to give a statement to the schools so they can get it to the risk pool to say that they're meeting the recommendation from the health officer, because there's discussion of the risk pools not providing coverage if they're not within the recommendation of the health officer. You know.
Yeah, 2 insurance companies have gone to the governor and asked for the governor to provide relief against any kind of litigation as it relates to COVID and stuff. So the 2 main insurers are the ones that are driving the economic side of this equation about, hey, we're not gonna insure them if they open up. So that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what the superintendents and the school boards are all dealing with, and I'm just trying to deal with what we can do to help. You know, I can't force schools to open.
Well, the food issue is low hanging. I think that falls into our approach with the second harvest and stuff. And so that to me seems like a real low hanging issue that we could address fairly easily and quickly, and would certainly fit in with everything else we've done and stuff. I wonder, in your conversations, Mary, is there an opportunity to maybe segregate some of the issues so that, you know, like food an issue? I mean, that's something we can deal with real quickly, but some of this other stuff, you know, if we've got to meet with each one of the individual school districts, that's going to take us time. And I don't want to hold up food for kids while we're figuring out what the school districts need.
Right. Well, and like I said, I'll talk to Mike and see, maybe we can get, Tim thinks he could have something to us by the end of the week that would address what his needs are. Central Valley and District 1 already have, but I don't think, like when I brought up the food issue, they haven't thought through that. So I don't know. They're so scrambling to try to figure out how to get kids back safely right now that, anything we could do to help would be helpful. But how can we do it? So like I said, I'll try to figure it out. But if you're okay, I mean, hopefully Monday we can have Mike Dunn, Ben Small. I'll check with Adam, District 81, and Tim, because I think Tim gives that smaller district perspective rather than just the bigger district's perspective. And the military, because like I said, I'm really concerned with, when they're talking about, military missions, and this is, we want to be there to support those working families. And I think we want to be there to support the working families no matter where they're at. That's one of the things, which is why I think the day camps are going to be so important for us to figure out how can we help that's in a reasonable manner.
Yeah. Well, we might, if we had Central Valley, SPS, and maybe we reach out to Meade and have them part of the conversation too, then that way we've covered the three largest school districts in North Valley and Spokane, and then Cheney School District, which is the one for the base. Then Mike Dunn.
Yeah, Medical Lake really does most of the base stuff. So, and he was on the call with the base commander.
So Medical Lake and then Mike Dunn, maybe that's a good cross section to try and figure out path forward from here. What do you think of that, Josh? You okay with that?
Yeah, no, I think that sounds good. Can I ask, Mary, when you talk about, when you're referring to the food issue, is it getting the food to the kids that are at their houses, or is it actually paying for the cost of the food?
So it'd be partly the cost of the food. So last year,
how do they handle the cost during a normal year, the non-COVID year? Then?
Well, so when you're in school, it's it gets paid for, parents put into an account and all those things. So,
yes.
But what happened in the spring is they just went out and had sack lunches, and they had so many at different locations, and people could just come and pick them up. So the school's not opening. They want to continue to do that.
Okay, I gotcha.
But you're not going to be able to have a list of who's on the list, who's not on the list, who's paid, who's hasn't. I mean, that's something that makes it hard for the schools that are not opening. That I'd rather just make sure that we're providing lunch for the kids that need it, because it's really going to be the kids that need it that are going to be there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that will be a big challenge for the rural schools, because some of them don't have transportation, so you don't have the ability to get to a drop-off point to be able to get to food, or some of the low-income neighborhoods like in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how we tackle this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, well, I guess this. So, Mary, in your conversations, is it? So, I mean, the students that pay, for the full price for the lunches or on a sliding scale, that helps offset the cost of the food. But the students that get the free lunch, how is that food paid for? Traditionally, I mean, is there federal dollars that come in for that?
So USDA usually pays for, they get funding from USDA for free, and then for the reduced amount.
Is there discussion that funding is at risk this year or the school year?
No, that funding should be there. So it's a gap funding that, in case there's kids, so it'd be us paying the rest of the reduced cost.
Okay.
For them and the kids that, aren't on free and reduced, that might go, get it, because there's no way to have them really put in for the money, for the parents because of how it's set up.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
That's why I say it's a gap funding that we would be providing for potentially, I don't know if every school district, going to do it or not, or what. So.
Okay.
So we'll reach out to have those individuals be here on Monday, and I'll block out an hour to have the conversation in, and we'll do it toward the end of the meeting on Monday. So if we have to run long, we can run long.
I think we talked about 10:30, and that way, if we have an hour and a half, we could have it. And like I said, I'll reach out to Mike, and I'll reach out to the school districts that we listed.
Okay. All right.
I have one point of clarification.
Go ahead.
So just a point of clarification on the SEDS letter. I was not clear as to what we were going to commit to for an estimated value of in-kind services. I got a copy of Spokane Valley's letter, and they're contributing $20,000 in in-kind contributions through staff time.
My motion was that we would participate in reaching the goal of the 20% needed. I didn't give a dollar amount. I didn't give a max or a minimum. It was that we would participate in reaching that 20% of in-kind staff time that was needed as a part of the requirement.
Yeah, so there was no number.
So you think that it'll be sufficient to just put in there that we'll participate in the requirement for the 20% staff time?
I think so. I mean, that they didn't say we need X number from the county. I mean, how that's why I didn't do a specific, because they didn't give a specific number. They just said as a whole we need 20%. So it's like, all right, we will participate in that. Okay. I mean, they didn't ask for a specific number from us. So.
Okay.
Then I assume that we have your permission to use your stamps for this letter today?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Tony sent out the bid document specifically under the mental health tag, so there won't be any confusion. I think it's probably the same language. Probably pretty standard for our bids, but I forwarded those to you and you.
Okay, that completes all the business coming before the board. It is now 11:45, and
was Jerry going to do his?
I can do it now, or
executive session.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. So how long do you need for executive session?
5 minutes.
Okay, so thank you, Josh, for catching me. I was on the roll. We are going to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing
performance of a public employee.
Performance of a public employee, and present will be our senior management team and all three commissioners. And we will be in executive session for approximately 5 minutes. And when we are done with the executive session, we will be adjourned. We will not, there will be no action taken as a result of the executive session. We're gonna let these fine folks escape the room. So it is now 11:46. Tick tock, tick